without further ado, I will hand the mic over to Bill Bonvillian, who will be the moderator of the session today. Many of you will know Bill. He's a lecturer at MIT and Senior Director for Special Projects at Open Learning. And he will introduce our guests, Eric and Kate. I'll hand it over to you, Bill.
Thanks, Carolyn. Appreciate it. And let me just introduce briefly Kate and Eric. Eric is a professor at MIT and a director of the Scheller Teacher Education Program and the Education Arcade at MIT. He's head of MIT's Department of Comparative Media Studies and Writing. He is an expert on the application of technology to education, and his research has really focused on computer gaming and simulations for building understanding of science, technology, engineering. He's the author of 4 books on these subjects. And Kate Moore is a research scientist who studies how to teach middle and high school students about systems and ethics behind artificial intelligence. She earned her doctoral degree at Columbia University's Teacher College. And before entering the field of education research, Kate had on-the-ground experience serving as a middle school science and special education teacher for 10 years. So we've got 2 very talented discussants today. Let me give a brief introduction. We've discussed many topics, as Carolyn suggested, in our J. Wells series on AI and education. And now we turn to a crucial one, which is how teachers in classrooms are using it and the challenges they face. So the availability of generative AI tools like GPT is, as we all know, a new disruptive force in education. And MIT's Scheller Education Program, which Eric directs and where Kate is a research scientist. This program is engaged in activities to both understand how teachers are impacted by the arrival of AI and help prepare them and their students to use AI tools both ethically and effectively. And they see generative AI as offering real opportunities in education, yet many first attempts will miss opportunities for connection as well. How do teachers and school districts use generative AI? Well, the way they use it is going to affect gaps in education. Those who know how to use the tool effectively could show significant, remarkable gains even in learning. Those who don't may miss out on these opportunities. So that's why teacher and student AI literacy is so important. And Kate and Eric are both deeply involved in a series of AI fluency projects that support students and teachers in their creative and the connected use of AI for learning. So let me turn first to Eric, and then we'll turn to Kate.
Thanks, Bill. I'm going to share some slides here. Great. So thanks for having us here. I'm going to give sort of a quick overview of some of the frameworks we use to think about AI education. And then I'm going to turn it over to Kate for some more sort of deep dives into some case studies that she's been working on as part of her work, working deeply with teachers in schools, thinking about both the sort of like opportunities, as Bill was just talking about, as the opportunities that they have, as well as the challenges that they face. And this slide here, I think sort of really summarizes also, again, where Bill was going, and sort of about the opportunities and the potential costs. The bottom line here is that we work from the premise that we don't think that people are going to be replaced by AI in many professions, but we do think that people who know AI will replace people who don't know AI in many places. And so our goal is to prepare everybody to really be able to use AI effectively and creatively and ethically as part of their work and as part of their lives. My work is part of a larger initiative at MIT called RAISE, Responsible AI for Social Empowerment and Education. I'm one of the co-PIs along with Hal Abelson, and Cynthia Brazil is the PI of this project. And this is a comprehensive project across many different sort of sub-projects where we're working on both AI education, teaching people about AI, as well as thinking about ways that we can use AI to help people learn more effectively. The goals of RAISE, just real quickly, are to advance equity in learning, education, and empowerment through AI. We do this by rethinking and innovating how to holistically and equitably prepare diverse K-12 students and an inclusive workforce. And we want them to be happy, engaged, and successful in an increasingly AI-powered society. So this isn't just about career readiness, that is one component of it, because we also want them to be sort of happy and engaged citizens and people in the world. I'm going to lay out some principles here, which I call the roadmap for transforming education with AI, which is just some principles about how we think about using AI in schools and in education. And I think this will sort of help establish some baseline stuff when I turn it over to Kate. Many of you may know Bloom's taxonomy, the idea that we sort of have at the baseline, we have remember, and we sort of push this all up to create. And we really want to sort of be pushing people up along this taxonomy and many activities that they do, including the ways that we use AI in schools. So we want people to know and understand AI. We want people to use and apply AI. And we really want them to evaluate and create AI. In talking with Kate about this diagram just yesterday, the day before, she said, the interesting thing about AI is that creating and evaluating we should put it at the top, but it doesn't necessarily require people to sort of analyze and apply and understand it as they're doing that. So we really need to think about taxonomy maybe more as like a pillar, that they really need to be able to do all of these things. They need to be able to create, evaluate, and analyze, but they also need to be able to apply and understand it as well. I think that's a really important comment. As Bill mentioned, our word fluency, we're trying to sort of move away from AI literacy, even though people use that word a little bit more frequently than fluency. But we really want people to be much more, have a much deeper understanding than just sort of literacy, which is sort of maybe a superficial understanding, whether to be fluent with it. So they're using it readily in activities when it's appropriate, figuring out when it's not appropriate and not using it in those places. We think about these different components about ethics and AI, core concepts, creativity, career readiness. All these are sort of foundations for what we think about as fluency. This is a common metaphor that we see a lot now, a professor in every pocket or something like this, a tutor in everybody's on everybody's screen. Everybody's going to be able to get much smarter and do better because we have tutors that are going to be available to everybody. This is something that's pushed a lot in a lot of different from a lot of different companies and a lot of different sources. I think we need to think about in this model that we're going to have a professor who's going to be able to teach us everything in our pockets. We need to ask fundamental questions about, does AI improve learning? Can we define learning in that context? What does it mean to learn? And how do we think about these tools being used in association with those different definitions of learning? One important thing, it's maybe a little hard to see on your screens here. At the beginning of the semester, my colleague Justin Reich, who runs the Teaching Systems Lab here at MIT, posted some information about a new poster that they developed, and I'll have a link to this later on. It was sort of like some guidelines around AI for schools at the beginning of this current year. The very first one of those things was that AI will not replace teachers. And right above that in my Twitter feed where I saw this was this commercial for a tool that says one app replaces teachers, tutors, and textbooks. And this is really not what we're thinking about. This is not our design. We're not looking to replace teachers or even textbooks, perhaps. We're thinking about how does these tools sort of get integrated into an ecosystem that involves teachers, that involves peers, that involves traditional media, but also involves AI along with those things. One of the reasons I think that people sort of are so attracted to this idea of the AI tutor and that can teach you everything is that we need to move beyond retention to much deeper learning. Yes, I think you can, if you want to sort of think about quick recall and understanding of some math facts, probably some of these AI tutors can get you there very quickly. But we need to be thinking about learning that's much more durable than that, and that's much more comprehensive than that. Again, with AI tools readily available and computational tools more generally available, we need to be thinking about what's the value added that people will have inside lots of different kinds of ecosystems, and those are not going to be to sort of do the kinds of things that tutors can teach you really quickly. We need to be able to design things for the whole student. As we think about designing educational technologies, we often think about, okay, this student needs to learn this thing to get past this benchmark here. But we really need to be thinking about who that student is, what position do they have in their community, in the world, with their friends and peers, what kind of identity do they have? Thinking about that whole student can really help transform the way we think about these tools that are not just sort of delivering facts to them, but helping them sort of understand deeper concepts, to develop identity about who they are and what they're doing. Those kinds of things are actually much more difficult to do. I think we can get there with a lot of these tools, but it's going to require a much deeper sort of thought than just sort of like getting people to respond to math questions. We do need to do research. I run a reading group here on campus around AI education. Kate is a part of this as well. And one week we read two papers. These are sort of paraphrases of those two papers. One was called Large Language Models, or things like ChatGPT, May Harm Learning. And the other one was called LLMs Perform as Well as Human Tutors. And these were both papers that were peer-reviewed and published, and they both have some merit to them. There's qualifications around a lot of the things, as you can imagine in research. There's a lot of qualifications of the things we might think about in these, but the fact is that we don't know a lot about where and when large language models and AI can work effectively and where it works counterproductively. And we really need to be thinking about doing research that helps us understand that space about who, when, and where these different kinds of things can be useful and when they can be harmful. The ways they're harmful is sometimes it gets kids to think that they are good at something because they have this AI help. When the AI help is withdrawn, they actually don't understand it very well. So sometimes it provides a false sense of understanding to them, which can be harmful. Quick example from my own class. We did a little activity in my class where we gave a programming assignment to students, and we gave 3 different groups: a group with ChatGPT, a group with CodeLlama, which is a sort of an open source large language model, and a group that could only use Google. I first gave them a task where they needed to do a programming assignment, and they could use these tools. And then I told them I was going to give them a test afterwards where they couldn't use the tools. And sure enough, the ChatGPT group got it really quickly on the first activity where they could use the tools. The CodeLlama group struggled, took a little bit longer. And finally, the Google group took the longest to solve the problem. But then when I took the tools away and I gave them a test, the ChatGPT group all failed. They could not understand, they could not repeat what they had done with ChatGPT. The CodeLlama group, about half of them got it right and half of them didn't, and the Google group all got it right. So there's something about struggling with this and sort of taking a little bit longer that can actually be really helpful and effective when you think about where we use those AI tools to help people. AI must support educators and supporting students. Teachers are such an important part of the ecosystem when you think about how we integrate teachers into the process and not remove them from the process by replacing them with tutors. Learning is so much more than just sort of learning facts. It's about those social relationships and about caring mentors and teachers. When you think about how we make those people more empowered to do their job and not remove them more from the process. That means educators need to be part of the AI conversation as we're designing tools. Sometimes tools are designed by technology companies without sort of really thinking about who the educators really are. And those educators really need to be a part of the conversation. They need to stay up to date on AI. This is a course we developed with Google, Generative AI for Educators. It's a 2-hour course open to anybody who can just learn some of the fundamentals of learning about AI. And this was really effective. We've had many people from around the world take this. It's now available in several other languages as well. But this has been really a nice experience to help people stay up to date. And it's going to be something that people need to do regularly. AI is not going to be the kind of thing that you learn once and then can sort of sit on for 5 or 10 years. It's going to be the kind of thing that teachers need to sort of stay up to date on a yearly basis. I think one of the most important things about learning about AI is to create communities, experiment, and share. The best way that people can learn, educators can learn, is from other educators. So really thinking about ways that teachers can create communities, share their experiences with each other, learn from each other what worked, what didn't, is going to be a really important part of advancing our understanding. And policy, educators being an important part of policy as well. We're going to see policies at the school level, district level, state level, federal level, emerging over the coming years. And really, teachers need to be a part of those conversations because they're the ones who really understand how this is working in a classroom. I'll just quickly mention a project here, just to give you the kinds of things that we're working on. Kale is a project we're working on in our lab. It's really thinking about what happens when we move from an AI tutor on a one-to-one basis, where an AI tutor is actually now part of a group. As I mentioned, I think that collaborative learning and learning with peers is so important, a part of the process for so many students. Kale is a way of sort of thinking about how does an AI agent become a member of that community? How does an AI agent actually help the group work together? So it's not just about people learning from AI, but people learning from each other. I do think, I won't spend a lot of time on this. I do think the future is bright if we sort of think about this. I don't want to sound too negative about AI in the future of education. I'm very optimistic about it, but we need to be thinking about it sort of carefully with research behind it, and thinking about ways that we can advance this in an evidence-based way. This is just real quickly, and I can share these slides later so you can see these things. This is Justin Reich's poster on Teachers on AI. This is a report that we released on generative AI in K-12 education and MIT perspective, which was released this past spring or summer. And we also have a policy paper that we released this past fall, how policy can help ensure the proper use of AI in K-12 education. These are all available. I can share the slides and the QR code so that people can download those later. With that, I will turn it over to Kate.
Hi, everybody. I'm Kate Moore. Thank you so much for the introduction, Bill. I'm a research scientist focusing on AI in education. I work with Eric and many other researchers at the STEP Lab, and I've been invited to speak a little bit about the work I've been doing with Irene Lee, who is at the Education Arcade, the MIT STEP Lab with us, and also at New Mexico State University. And also with Dr. Helen Zhang, who's at the Lynch School of Education at Boston College. What I wanted to speak about was a project called Everyday AI, which I've sent a link to in the chat for you. Everyday AI is a middle school curriculum that focuses on developing AI literacy for middle school, and we've also seen it applied in high school, but we're very open to receiving the term fluency, Eric. It's just that we've been working with the word literacy, and it's in the title now, so we're going to stick with it. And on top of that curriculum, we have been working since 2021 on a teacher professional development project. What that means is we've really tackled this problem in education where, teachers are putting out dumpster fires every day. They're working, they're fixing, they're building, they're creating, they're innovating, and they do not have time to learn how AI works, how to teach their students about AI. And what we've done is tackled that problem by creating a professional development program that connects teachers who are often isolated with each other through a book club, and then through a opportunity to practice during a summer camp where they can practice teaching this curriculum. And we've been working on this for 3 years, before I joined the program, Irene and Helen working on this. And since then, we've reached almost 70 teachers, 2,000 students all across the country. And what we're learning is that teachers, once they are connected to a community of people who are all chatting and learning about AI education, and once they practice teaching AI concepts or AI fluency in their classrooms, they outperform expert curriculum developers and experts in machine learning when these experts taught the same curriculum. So what I mean is teachers have the pedagogical wisdom and the insights into things like culturally responsive pedagogy, what their students love and are interested in, that makes these challenging topics really accessible and meaningful for their middle school students. So what we're finding, just to put a fine point on it, is that teachers are great at advancing middle and high school AI literacy. What they need is proper professional development to help them get there. I've had the privilege of interviewing about 65 teachers across the country to ask them about their work teaching artificial AI concepts to their middle school students. And, talking to them about this work, I've learned that some of them are also trying to work with large language models. Working with the PD has made them feel comfortable with AI. So some of these teachers are using large language models today for their own work, such as ideation, developing ideas as if they're working with a colleague, developing lesson plans, rapid creation of differentiated materials. And all of this is, I'm just hearing from some teachers that this is helping them feel like they have an extra ear they can bounce ideas off of. And maybe, although I don't have any evidence of this, maybe this is tackling one of the great issues in teachers of work, which is isolation. Teachers, particularly teachers who are teaching about artificial intelligence as part of their class, they're probably the only one in the building teaching this content. So it's hard to find somebody they can connect with to feel that they're not alone in this. I'm at my 5 minutes. I'm just going to take 2 more to emphasize a few things that we've also found from the research by interviewing and measuring teacher and student learning from this project. One is that we've learned that as teachers participate in this program, they start to see artificial intelligence education or understanding how AI works as not just about learning the technical content, but as something that's important for a person to learn as part of their being a citizen and part of their engaging in society. And what that's shown us is that AI literacy is interdepartmental. You know, we started thinking about this as something that would be championed by computer science teachers, but what we're seeing is that teachers in the Everyday AI project, they're librarians, they're English teachers, they're social studies teachers, and math teachers and science teachers, right? So teachers of any discipline can introduce their students to AI concepts with great efficacy, and their students report having positive experiences with it. One thing I'm also hearing from teachers is that there are ways that they have learned to identify bias in AI that have been really helpful for them. For example, actually, I'm going to give a personal example. I was teaching a class, this was last year, to graduate students, but we were doing an activity where you generate like a movie poster with image generator, generative AI tool. And one of my students was trying to create the movie poster for the movie Barbie, which had come out then and was very popular. And when we created the movie poster, we noticed that Ken was driving the car. And I don't know if you guys have seen Barbie, but one of the main things in this movie is that Ken does not drive the car, Barbie does. But because the model was trained on this data set that had an overrepresentation of men driving cars, the main points of the movie was misrepresented. And teachers who go through professional development that helps them be prepared to speak about these ways that bias can emerge in generative AI tools are ready to jump on those moments and speak to their students about some of these ways that bias can emerge. And teachers without that training might miss it. And that's where the harms might come in, where students start noticing that information that's generated by these tools, they might think that this is normal, right? One of the things that we've noticed is that there's an overrepresentation of some groups over others in the training data set. And the risk is that students get the idea that, the people who are marginalized in the data set are also marginalized in society. And that can give really difficult messages for young people who are trying to find their place in the world and see themselves as leaders. So I'm being a little bit vague because there's so many different ways that bias can sort of creep in and give confusing messages to our youth. But that's one of the reasons AI literacy is so important, to help teachers be prepared to have these conversations about bias in AI. So I think I'll stop there because I did want to just emphasize the fact that, we wanted to have teachers come to this talk to share their experiences introducing AI concepts to their students. And just because of the time of this talk, they're all in the classroom right now. So what I did is I went in and I interviewed 3 of our teachers. These are teachers who have been participating in our project since the first or second year of its beginning. And I'll ask Eric if I could trouble you to share your screen. Yeah, so these are 3 teachers who kindly let me chat with them after school. You'll see some of them in the video I'm about to play are actually in their classroom. And I want to introduce them because each of these teachers not only went through the PD that I described earlier, but then they returned in subsequent years and led the PD themselves. And what we've found is that when teachers teach teachers, we have the greatest impact on student learning of AI concepts. And we have the greatest growth in AI literacy according to our measures. So it's these teachers who are really showing that it's through educators that we might be able to advance some of the difficult conversations about AI. So let me give each teacher a quick introduction, and then I'll ask Eric to play the video. So on the left here is Phyllis Wilson. Phyllis is a veteran teacher of over 10 years with experience teaching in middle and high school science and computer science. She served, as I said, as what we call a facilitator during the Everyday AI project, where she introduced teachers to AI concepts. Phyllis is a master of strategies for integrating AI education into STEM education, and she's presented her work at several conferences as part of our Everyday AI project, and she's presented her work on AI, for example, at the National Association for Research on Science Teaching for NARST. Jesse is also an experienced classroom teacher with 9 years of experience teaching in middle and high school media arts. He teaches graphic design, yearbook, film, esports. His school, with some of his assistants, was awarded the State Innovation Zone grant in 2023 for exceptional work, in part because of the work he's doing in his film and media classes. Jesse served as a facilitator as well in the Everyday Project. And I consider him a master of strategies in integrating AI education into digital media education. And lastly, Kelly Powers, but certainly not least. Kelly is a veteran teacher of 25 years of experience teaching middle and high school computer science. She is a leader in the development of strategic pathways in computer science. She was formerly working at IBM, and she's left industry to come to the classroom and served as a facilitator in the Everyday Project. And fun fact about Kelly is that she was one of the teachers who initially advised the AI for K-12 working group in 2018, which has become will inform the AI for K-12 frameworks and learning standards worldwide. So with that, I'm going to ask Eric to play. It's just a 7-minute video of these teachers sharing their insights on first, how they are using large language models just for their own personal use, and then reflecting on some of the challenges and benefits and future of large language models in the classroom. Thank you, Eric.
So I use it in work. Like what I've been doing is anytime I have to write an email, I think I do pretty well with writing anyway. But when I'm doing a parent email, sometimes I'll send it out directly, but other times I'll put it into chat and say, edit this draft to a parent regarding the student's warning, just to make sure my tone is coming across and my message intent is there. And so I'll feed it to there just to see if it makes it better. And sometimes I keep the original, but normally at least I change a few things because I like having the, like some of the verbiage the chat uses. It's like, okay, that sounds nicer. That sounds better. So I use it for that. And like I did that to create a template basically. And I shared it with my department to contact parents about like violations of the cell phone policy.
So for my educational practice and how I'm using LLMs, I'm using it a lot for my prep work, creating assignments, not necessarily analyzing work just yet, but mostly just getting assignments to a point where I can come up with an idea for a creative assignment and I have a master prompt.
I use it for lesson ideas. Like if I have an idea of what I want it to look like, but I don't really have it like kind of spelled all the way out, I'll ask chat for like, just to kind of come up with something and see if it's in line with what I was thinking.
So professionally, I must say I haven't really used it a ton because the lessons, and this is where I get confused. A lot of these tools create amazing lesson plans, amazing activities. But if you think of the public school teacher, not me, but the public school teacher, they're usually given a curriculum that they have to follow. So do they really I mean, if anything, maybe differentiation activities, that would be a use case, but we're not really writing curriculum so much.
But I know that students right now are using it as a big crutch for like just turning in projects. And it's not necessarily learning, because that's the issue, is that schools right now are focused on do the task, get the grade, not find. Like I'm telling kids, like you can find the answer, but are you understanding the solution? And that's the biggest part of like learning. What made it worse was Google. You can Google a question now, and now Google has an AI response, but now no one's actually clicking on those links of where these are coming from.
Yeah.
I definitely see like the middle school brain, I see them using these tools to get their homework done and not really thinking like we would want them to think thoughtfully and thoroughly and spend some time with the model to engage in back and forth.
Because I don't think everyone has the discretion needed to go back and evaluate the product. Like you have to be able to say, okay, this was my idea, this is what I prompted, but is it actually doing what it was asked to do? And is it my work? Is it speaking the way I wanted it to speak, or is it just saying something random? I think that part takes time as well. Like you have to evaluate what's there.
Very rarely. We haven't done that because even at the school that I'm at, it's still kind of in between. And I don't want to step on other teachers like toes who are like reaching ANSIC, because we have all this. I am super like on board with classical learning, especially with reading and writing, especially writing, like learning how to write and synthesizing it. Like that's how your brain functions.
We're still limited by lots of tools being blocked. So they're not, and schools lacking policy. Like, how are we going to integrate AI into the curriculum? So it's thoughtful and it's just right for the kids. It's age appropriate. And not a lot of schools are still struggling with what that should look like. So
I think it's kind of crazy that some teachers are going to be able to develop their skill set because of the district they work in and benefit kids and make their workload easier and all this kind of stuff. And then you're going to have, once again, like a technology divide, but it's like some people are getting left behind and they have to do it the regular way. And I just don't think, I mean, I'm happy that the district I'm in now is not on the downside of that. But I do think about what that means for other teachers in other school systems who are not being taught anything about AI, who are not allowed to use it at all for their personal work or with students, and what that will mean for them. Like the whole point is for everyone to get better. And
so that's where my jam is, really, is like, how can I expose students to how AI works, how AI presents some harms and benefits to society. And as we prepare our students who are in my classroom to become creators of anything, what are some of the questions they're thinking about when designing tech? What are the harms their tech might have on society or people in our society? And what are the benefits? So they are getting a real great sense of how these technologies work, and doing a lot of getting feedback from their models and then making adjustments, going through the problem solving and design cycle. So we are doing a lot of AI, just not prompt engineering so much with my students.
AI at this point is going to make sure that everyone has their own production company. Everyone is able to kind of make all these things. I'm watching these interesting videos of there's one good writer, and you want to say LLMs are going to replace writers. And I'm like, no, LLMs are just going to be a catapult for writers.
But some of the tools are having like AI buddies inside of them. And in that case, then you will be creating certain prompts to interact with the tool embedded in the curriculum resource that you're using. I can see that blowing up beautifully in a great way.
I feel like a lot of people want to be on the PD train, I would say, when it comes to AI, but everybody is not teaching teachers how to help students use AI, or teaching teachers how to integrate AI into their curriculum, even more importantly. That's not what they're doing. It's more about, this is a tool for teachers only. That's kind of what you get. This is a tool for teachers to write a learning objective. You know what I mean? It's not necessarily helping me to deliver the content any better or to teach children content. So it's like, I feel like that part is not being addressed.
So I'll close by saying these teachers highlighted some areas of concern. One is that they're concerned about a digital divide between teachers who have training on AI and don't. And they're not yet seeing the connection between the LLM tools of today being useful immediately for them in their classroom. Happy to take questions. I'm sorry, I went a little bit over time. I'll pass the microphone back to Bill.
Kate and Eric, thanks very much. This is really a real helpful session. We will have a few minutes for questions. Let me just tell the group, if you could post your questions in chat, then I'll try and field them so we stay within our time limit. Let me start with the question I've got, and I'll ask it really of each of you. You know, Eric, You've given us a lot of insights in your presentation. What are the best practices that schools ought to be thinking about for AI and its application in education? And then, Kate, let me ask you, with all your dealings with teachers, what do you think the best practices are that teachers ought to start thinking about?
Yeah, I mean, it comes back to that comment I made earlier about sort of creating communities of practice. I think the best thing to do is to have people who are willing to experiment and share with other teachers to figure out what's working, what's not working, what's working for whom. You know, it would be a waste of time to think about everybody trying everything and not sort of sharing it with each other. And I also think that there's going to be people at different levels of readiness, and so the people who are ready to sort of test things now can learn and share that with the next wave of people who are maybe a little bit more reticent to use the technologies in their classrooms. I do think that one piece of advice is to not ban things. There's a sense that like, well, if we just ban everything, we just put up a big gate at the door, we will not have any problems. We won't have to think about this. We can just ignore this problem. We'll just say you can't use AI. I think that's the sticking your head in the sand solution, and I don't think that will be effective. What that does is create disparities. It means that people who have more access to tools outside of school will use those and benefit from those. The people who don't have access to those will sort of be hurt by not having access to those. It's really important to have people learning how to use them effectively and ethically, and I think that that's only going to happen through practice. But I think teachers need to have policies that they feel like that they're comfortable with as well, and they need to be a part of that process, which says, hey, like if we say you can't use the AI on certain assignments, we need to assume that that's the case. And if we find out that you are, and I don't think that should be done through AI detection tools, I think it's through conversation with students that you find out whether that's happened or not. Then there should be consequences to those things.
Thanks, Eric. Kate, how about teachers and best practice?
I disagree with everything. I agree with everything that Eric just said. And I think it's all relevant to teachers, particularly staying connected in a community. We found that teachers who are connected do the work longer and feel more refreshed and involved. Staying isolated, not connected, just trying to bulldoze it on your own leads to burnout. I also really appreciate Eric's point about the disparity, the risk of disparity if we just ban. And the one thing I'll add is that the research is still not out yet on this, so I'm just speaking from my own personal work interviewing teachers. But it seems that giving students AI tools and treating that as the educative experience leads to confusion, misunderstanding. Perhaps start by talking about how AI works first with your students, giving them a sense of what's happening under the hood, using some of the curricula that Eric shared, that I've shared, that's already out there, and then give them the tools.
Great points. And again, if folks have got questions, just please post them in the chat feature. There's been a lot of talk, obviously, and you all have both raised it at some length, about the application of AI-based tutors in education. Where are we in that process? How are these tutors coming along? What are some of the problems we've got with them? And what do you think their potential role is? Let me turn to you, Kate, and then to Eric.
Well, Eric's certainly the expert on this, but I
All
did
right.
make a few, I do have a few comments on this, and I'll pass to Eric. One is, as I said before, teachers are having a hard time connecting the pipes, right? They're using tools like Chat GPT, but also Khan Academy's Khan Migo to create materials for their students if they have a membership. And the materials just aren't quite landing. They're great at differentiating. There's opportunities to really make materials quickly, but the opportunity to put in meaningful images, relevant content, and have tutors that are actually responding to where the students are and their needs as learners isn't quite there. And there's a few concerns. I don't think they made it into the video, but that students might feel if they're just working with a tutor or just working with AI produced materials, that they might feel isolated or like they're not connecting with sort of the social learning that's so critical in education. And I know you were probably going to say the same thing, Eric, so I'll pass the microphone to you. Yep.
I'll definitely agree with that. I think that's the key, is that tutors need to be part of an ecosystem of tools, and used at the appropriate times for the appropriate activities. So much of learning is social. It's about sort of connecting with other people. It's about developing my identity. It's about having relationships with a teacher who I feel like cares about me. You know, a lot of this stuff from tutors comes from the Two Sigma result of many years ago, where like if you give a kid a tutor, you know, you can make a 2 standard deviation difference in their learning. And I think there's evidence that some of that is true, but that's not all about like the tutor can just deliver them facts. It's about a real tutor, a live tutor who can understand the student, think about their relationship, think about how they develop as a person. And that's what a tutor does. And you know, AI tutors don't do that, even if we try to pretend that they do that. But I do think that they can play an important role. You just have to think about how the other people sort of are using that tool as part of that ecosystem of things. So as I said, in our examples, we use it as a member of a group. So as a way to sort of connect people within a group. We have a project going on at MIT where it's helping students learn software development, but it's integrated into the software development environment, and they can ask questions. It's about, you know, it's things that professional programmers use, except it's a much more Socratic method of doing that. So I think there's really much more better contextual ways of doing things like this. There's better social ways of doing things like this. We're using it in games, for example, where it's sort of supporting some of the gameplay that they're doing. So I think it's about sort of thinking about where to apply it effectively. But I think the idea is like, this is a tool that's just going to sort of, if we give this to everybody, they'll make 2 standard deviations of difference is a little bit short-sighted.
Great. Thanks for those thoughtful responses. Eric, let me ask you a question, and then Kate chime in as well. You know, MIT Raise has been the effort you mentioned at MIT to confront AI in education. MIT Raise has been collaborating with Google for teacher professional development, and where does that stand? What's going to be the results of that? What can we hope to see from that collaboration?
Yeah, man. So one of the courses I mentioned is there's a 2-hour course that we have that that people can take. That's an intro to AI for teachers. The rationale behind that one was like we want people to just understand AI. Don't like immediately understand how you're going to apply this to students and apply this in your professional practice. Just like understand what it is and how it's used and how it can sort of help you. We think that's a really important step because I think teachers often jump too quickly about how am I going to use this with my students. So that's our first step, is that we've done that. I think now we're thinking about expanding that kind of professional development to provide other kinds of tools, to provide more in-depth learning experiences for students. Google themselves has developed a special large language model for education. I think it's called Learn LM, that they announced recently. And I think we'll start to see some interesting results from things like that, where people can apply that in different contexts. I think it's gonna be really important to then sort of do some research on that and understand where it's succeeding and where it's not succeeding.
Let me just ask one closing point here. Could you each give us maybe a couple of sentences from each of you on what you think the most important kind of applications of AI are going to be in education in this K through 12 kind of realm? What do you think the really significant things are going to contributions that AI could make? What might they be? Kate, can I start with you?
Yeah, and I'm excited to hear what Eric's going to say. So first, I'll just resonate with what Kelly Power said in the video, that she sees this opportunity with, she calls them buddies, but it's actually kind of like what Eric was saying too, where you have a AI agent who's inserted into an ecosystem that's designed for a collaborative learning experience, or it's part of this model that you're exploring, and you have a buddy or an agent jump in. I do think there are opportunities for personalized learning, but I'm hesitant to say we're anywhere close to that now, because we have to think very seriously about what it means to personalize, what kind of data security risks are involved in that. And, you know, what does it mean to have a personal tutor know you very well, right? For example, like surveillance issues. So I do have hesitancy about that. But I do think those are 2 opportunities. I hope I didn't take too much time from Eric, because I'm very excited what you're going to say.
No, so I'm gonna agree that collaborative learning is a really important place that we'll see AI. I think ways that can help teachers support teachers in sort of making sense of student data, those kinds of things as well. But I also think that we'll see it integrated more into other tools. So rather than sort of seeing the standalone tutor where I come in and I sort of ask questions. I think the Python tutor that I mentioned is a good example of this. We'll see it integrated into other tools. So things that people are already using as part of their practice. You know, it could be a game, it could be a simulation, it could be a development tool, it could be a creative tool. You know, things like that where you have AI integrated into those to help provide students with feedback, to help provide them with guidance. Those are the places where I think we'll see a lot of interesting results.
Thank you both so much for your really terrific insights. Obviously, the role for AI and for teachers in schools is a crucial question for everybody participating in this event, and you've really given us some great thoughts about how that might work.